Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report. Sorry for for starting things off late. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, uh, uh, Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, everybody, full disclosure, I will take the heat for us starting late because we're having some COVID related rants behind the scenes, and I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, well, I may address that later on as we end the show.
There you go.
After taking a week off, um, due to some
Uh-huh.
personal issues, we're back after we're back Thanksgiving episode, if you will, of Pound for Pound Box Report. For those who are new to the show, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. When boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. For the time being, if you want to find out all information about the show, the blog page is the place to go to. If you're checking us out, iTunes and whatnot. P4P Boxer, P4P Boxer Report.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the top right of the blog page for where to find us all over social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, also where you can find us wherever podcast outlets are distributed, like iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Mixcloud, and all that, because we're just about everywhere in the podcast realm. Where you can donate to the show. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link that you can check out on the blog page, or if you're checking us out live on YouTube, just hit the description and you'll get all the information on that as well. And also on the blog page, last but certainly not least, uh, got a link to my online coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody.com. Right now, doing a fitness group fitness challenge centered around one of the programs on Beachbody on Demand, 10 rounds, a boxing based program that's based on cardio boxing centered cardio moves, as well as some resistance like weightlifting work on the side. I'm still waiting for Daniel to get on that. I think he'll be good for that. You too, Gail. It started at the beginning of the month. It goes throughout this month, um, through the beginning of December. Um, or if you're just interested into some free workouts, Beachbody on Demand offers 2 week trials throughout the year. So, given this is the holiday season, if you want to get yourself in shape, or you want to keep yourself in shape, or just not put on too many pounds, get at least 2 weeks, 2 free weeks of workout ends over on Beachbody on Demand. For those who are interested, hit me up on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page. That's at P4P Box Report, or hit up the coaching link on my blog page. Let's get things going. Because we were off last week, we're going to not just talk about fights this past weekend. We're going to go back a couple of weeks specifically. I'm going to start the show with you girls, ladies first as always. Uh, Going back a couple of weeks, the big fight of that during uh, the, pa- the big fight from a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, was the welterweight fight between Terence Crawford, defending his WBO 147-pound strap, against former IBF champion Kell Brook. Uh, Crawford, he did what we most of us thought he would do. Um, Surveyed the scene early, uh, before he really started to settle down in rounds 3 and 4. Stopped him in the fourth round. Terrific shot, right jab almost that hurt Brook bad. Follow up combination finished him off. Discussed the fight, Gil, but also there was a lot of rumors and hot topic talk about a rift between Crawford and Bob Arum. It was as much the focus as much as the fight itself, and there's been a whole lot discussed after the fight from both Crawford and Arum. That's still ongoing, a rift, if you will. Both have spoken publicly out against each other, and what they're doing for each other and what they're not doing for each other in their careers or whatever. Um, Arum, Arum did an interview with the Athletic talking about how much money he's losing promoting Crawford's fight. Crawford, in response, said, "If you're losing that much money, then let me go then." And then, the discussion is still ongoing. I think ultimately they'll come together and come up with some kind of deal. And a lot of it's centered around the fact that there's been an urging from fans for Bud to fight the big names at welterweight, the Spence, the Garcias, the Thurmans, the Sean Porters and whatnot, over across the street at PBC, and the frustration that those fights are not being made. Um, I get the sense, Gail, that Bud Crawford is also equally frustrated based off of his comments. Uh, Talk about the fight and kind of just wrap yourself, or give us kind of a wrap around all this tension and all this back and forth between Bud and Bob.
Oh, it's like watching relatives you love fighting at Thanksgiving dinner, and it's ugly, and you want it to stop, and they both have a point. Here we had an early version of it in the boxing world. Let's start with the fight itself. Crawford, as usual, started the fight fairly slowly. A lot of the great fighters like Crawford, usually like Vasily Lomachenko, even a Canelo, they start slowly because they have so much skill and so much confidence in their skill. They don't feel the need to roar out of the gate. They'd rather invest a little bit of time, a little bit of focus, and sizing up the opponent in the ring without worrying too much about their offense and their strategic approach. It was classic Bud in that way. He started the fight in an orthodox stance. And Brook was having success, keeping him at jab's length, really for the first 3 rounds. Crawford switched to southpaw when he couldn't close the distance in the orthodox stance. And you just get the feeling with guys like Crawford, they're that snake coiled up ready to strike. Sure enough, boom, just like that, Crawford blasts Brook with a hard right hook. It staggered Brook over to the ropes. He didn't go down, but clearly the ropes held him up. Referee Tony Weeks waves away Crawford, administers a count. He lets Brook continue. Crawford has a laser focus when he thinks he's got hurt prey. Delivered another right hook, left hook, and he just started clubbing Brook. And Weeks moved right in. He did not allow Brook to take any unnecessary punishment to that reconstructed face of his on both sides. And I'm very glad. I'm sure Weeks had that in mind and stopped it maybe just a touch sooner than he might have had that not been the case. But that was the case. It was the right decision. Crawford gives Brook, complete glare that, did you get what you were looking for? Kind of look on, and himself admires his work, saunters off to his corner, fight's done. So you think all the action is over until post-fight interview, where we know, and Terence Crawford knows, he's going to get asked yet again, well, what next? When are you going to get a real opponent? And here's Bob Arum standing next to him. Pardon me. And they start getting into it a little bit about, well, you're losing me a lot of money, Terence, and you don't play nice with media, and you don't help me promote your fights, and I'm doing the best I can, and Bud's getting a little irritated that Bob can't get him the big fights. I want it. And this thing travels offline after the fight in a week where we should have all been commenting on how skilled Crawford is, because, yeah, sure, we get it. Kell Brook is not the peak Kell Brook of his career at this point, but he's still a legitimate opponent. He still had enough skill to make Crawford think for a few rounds. Yeah, he took him out, but Crawford's skills are still obvious and present, whatever you think of the opponent standing there. Instead of celebrating that and talking about that, and remember how long it took Errol Spence to get Brook out of there. Let's just compare notes. Triple the length of time that Bud did. That's what we should be talking about. They now have a common opponent. But no, now we're talking about the in-house fight between your relatives. We're all watching between Bob Arum and Terence Crawford. And I firmly believe it's born completely out of frustration over their situation. Crawford, I think, has some loyalty to Bob. Bob has been very good to Terence along his career. It's been a really good partnership. They've been very comfortable with each other, but they've come up against this brick wall called PBC, where all the top welterweights are on that other side of the wall. And Arum can make a fight, but it's going to cost. And in this environment, and the fact that Terence doesn't necessarily put a lot of butts in the seats, and he has a rather inflated sense of his worth on the open economic market, not on the athletic market at all. It has nothing to do with his skill, but we know that boxing is the entertainment business. It is entertainment and it is business. And Terence is a little bit uncomfortable with that part of things. If he didn't really have to do interviews with other than a few people he feels comfortable with, he wouldn't do it. But it helps sell fights. It helps have a personality to get people out there. We also have a pandemic situation, so it would need to be a pay-per-view. Who's going to sell the pay-per-view? You know, if Errol Spence and PBC are going to carry that part of the load, then they're going to get the lion's share of the money. Oh, Bud doesn't like that either. So we have some principled people, some frustrated people who know what the game's about and are only willing to change so much. Here we sit, irritated, after what was a very solid performance by Terence Crawford. But this little war between he and his promoter are all we're talking about. Is he going to leave Arum to try to go get these big fights? I don't think he will. I don't think he will. He has a little time to wait it out. If what we are hearing about vaccines and a potential curb in the pandemic by maybe late spring, maybe Bud could wait it out. And we also really do need to see how Earl looks against Danny Garcia, and then we can have this discussion start in earnest. But up until then, it's some of your family squabbling, and it's just unfortunate.
Unnecessary bickering back and forth, publicly especially. And I'll go to you, Daniel. Brief summary of the fight, please. But what do you make of all of this squabbling back and forth between the two? Gail is a semi-regular on TMZ. The way that Arum and Bud are going back and forth at each other, it would make perfect fodder for a TMZ. And it's not just boxing fans that have been talking about this, Daniel. This is going outside of the boxing realm. As I wrote about this for 3kings.com. You can check out my work over there at 3kings.com, where I'm a writer. Dana White, Dana White from UFC, enemy of Bob Arum. The two don't like each other. He went into a savage attack about Arum last week. I'm not going to repeat the language here because it may be too vulgar for a lot of people who are watching or will watch later or will listen later on. He got into the discussion as well as basically telling Arum, quit bitching, just do your job as a promoter. So your reaction to all of this back and forth between Bud and Bob.
Well, like you mentioned first, the fight. The fight was pretty much where everybody expected to be. Like, Kell Brook looked good in spots. His jab did keep Bud at bay for a little bit when Bud was an orthodox stance. But we know what happens when Bud switches southpaw. He decides to hunt, and that's what he did. And yeah, that's probably the best scalp that he has at welterweight, but it's still, we have to always take into account it is a diminished Kell Brook. And the referee stopped it when he did, and that was a good decision because he was already asking how that happened. So that's one area. whatever else is talking about is obviously everything that popped off when it came to this, when it came to the discussions, because like Gail's right, both sides are right when it comes into this. At one point, yeah, it's frustrating that Bob doesn't pick up the phone, leave his grudges without him on the side, and try to make fights that you can make sure to highlight the welterweight and pretty much highlight the main star right now you have it at the division, because you were building on Loma, but now Loma is down for the count, and nobody knows yet what you're going to do with Lopez, because if you go to 140, you got to build him up again, try to convince him to do 135. That's another thing. But at the same time, that you can see the frustrations. Bob's right in the aspect of the fact that, yeah, it's outside of Omaha. And depending on the time of year here at MSG, Bud does not, unfortunately, sell tickets in the long range when it comes to casual fans, which is who you need to bring. And that's the ultimate, unfortunately, side effect. And it's one of the things that can easily be used by the PBC crowd to say, why do we need you? You don't move tickets outside of Omaha. And that's a dangerous thing to have when you have someone like Crawford, when you're good, you know you're good. Some people are already calling you pound for pound number one, whether it's by media basis or in your own personal preference, like Mike, I know you do. But at the end of the day, you can be pound for pound number one, but if you're not number one is selling tickets, people can avoid you, just citing money. Now, obviously, the main opponent is Errol Spence. We all know that he has to recover his fights, and we have to see how he looks against Garcia. Although I believe him more likely he's not going to look good against Garcia if he rushed this. Now, the main situation that wound up happening is what's going to happen in the spring or late winter, because it's pretty evident now. They think they find the Orange Mussolini finally accepted that he lost. Looks like. So you're looking at a situation where you're gonna want to get fans in, and everything looks like you mentioned. It'll most likely happen, at least occur within the first 100 days of the upcoming Biden administration, which means you're gonna get genuine crowds back, and that may help sway getting putting tickets in. Ultimately, though, that we have to see how that shapes up in the future, though, because the frustration is not going to go away. The financial barrier is not going to go away because, unfortunately, I mentioned this on Twitter. You're dealing with two people, on Bob Arum and Al Heyman, who despise doing business with each other unless it is the absolute last resort, unless it has to be done. And Bud, he made a pretty good statement where he can say it has to be done, because say what you want about the tickets, say what you want about the pay-per-views. The fact of the matter is, he was on ESPN TV, regular TV, not pay-per-view, not ESPN Plus, standard ESPN, and that that provides more eyeballs to you. And Errol Spence, his thing's gonna go into a pay-per-view, which you don't know who's gonna buy. So they're making the case, but they have to let bygones be bygones because honestly, I don't really view Crawford as being the guy to try to jump ship and try to see what's greener when it comes to the PBC because at the end of the day, I think he understands that he may be frustrated with Bob, but Bob did make him as a promoter. So it is what it is, unfortunately.
After the fight, after Crawford's win over Brook, um, Aaron mentioned that a deal with Pacquiao was negotiations were going on, were happening for a fight between Crawford and Pacquiao, right? And that kind of were stalled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, excuse me. Um, could if Aaron decides to try to go back into negotiations and make a fight against Pacquiao, say the first quarter of 2021, overseas in the Mid East, uh, do you think that would appease Bud for the time being and kind of temper down his emotions, his frustrations with his current situation?
Yeah, I think we'll go a long way. Do I think it's a good fight? Mm, Pacquiao will have been out of the ring a long time. And yes, his performance against Thurman was very impressive. I'm not sure after being out so long and well north of starting to definitely be settled into north of 40, um, whether taking a fight with Crawford is a great idea, unless there is a lot of money involved. If the nice, big, juicy, healthy site fee from some Middle Eastern nation eager to get people over there is in play, great. Then you've got the pay per view money, great. You can get a little bit of a crowd, great. Certainly, Pacquiao performing in the Middle East does open up the potential of having fans from the Philippines, potentially. Um, Depending on how quickly they do it, depending on how much the pandemic is still in play, it's certainly feasible. From Crawford's perspective, great. I do think, though, there will, even after this fight, if it's made, and even if he wins in a real similar manner to the way he did with Brook, the whispers are going to keep going. Oh, well, he beat up an old man. You know, I mean, the poor man can't win. People want him standing across from Errol Spence. That's the bottom line. And assuming we see more or less the same pre-accident Errol Spence on December 5th, that drum beat's going to keep up until it's banging so loud that no one can avoid it anymore.
Sorry, I was on mute. I go to you, Daniel. Crawford's deal ends October of next year, October 2021. Do you see a scenario where a Bud pulls what Andre Ward did against Gary Shaw and basically rides out his deal until the contract expires? Or do you think that they will eventually rectify things and you will see Bud in the ring fighting whoever?
I don't think he can afford. I don't know how much the money, how much Bud spends, but I don't think he can actually afford to sit out and wait, especially if on PBC side you start seeing the welterweights get more active. Because if you're just sitting there while everybody else is fighting each other, that's a bad look. The main difference between him and Andre Ward, you knew who the best super middleweight in the world was at the time that he decided to do this with Gary Shaw, and then later on with Goose. You knew who the best in the division was. Everybody knew they were pretty much playing for second place in that division at the time. Right now, it's an open question when it comes into it. People, even after the accident, people I know good amount, still will rank Spence higher than Bud. And so that leaves it as a very nasty sticking point, you can say. And Bud trying to ride out the contract against Bob, who is very, very experienced at having people try to ride out his contract. And he can easily point out to say, when it comes to what if he tried it, you're not Floyd. You're not Oscar. You're not bigger than the promotion yourself. You're Mikey Garcia in this equation now. You can leave. You can relax. But at the end of the day, Bob can say, you need me a little bit more than I need you. And that's a dangerous part because Floyd, Oscar, they grew to a point where Bob needed them a lot more than they needed him. But it's not there yet.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out over throughout this year and going into next year. Will they make amends? I tend to believe they will, because to your point, Daniel Crawford, he cannot afford uh, to sit out. Many people have questioned him already because he hasn't had the big fight at 147 pounds, and he's kind of stuck in a sense. This is what he gets, and I've said this before. This is kind of what he got. This is kind of the chickens coming home to roost, if you will, when he signed that extension. Um, he didn't have to at the time, in my opinion. He shouldn't have signed it, but when you do, and you don't get the big fights that you want, this is what happens. In ultimate, and at the end of the day, um, Bob Arum controls the cards on the table. Uh, Crawford can only do so much if he wants that fight. If he wants that big money, he can only thing he can really do is wait things out, and I don't see him doing that. So yeah, where this goes from here, that's a big question. But the rift between the two, they can't hide it no more. It's not a situation where uh, uh, both parties are saying like things are all good, because we all know now that it's not. That it's not, and it's not going to be copacetic for the immediate future. So yeah, stay in tune, stay in touch with us, stay in tune with us, because the issues between these two are not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's move on. We talked about Crawford and Brook on the undercard, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. You had Joshua Franco, who scored one of the upsets of the year. Uh, I'm not gonna say one of the upsets of the year. Let me retract that. Who scored a surprise to many folks when he defeated Andrew Moloney earlier this summer. Uh, Moloney had a version of a world title, WBA kind of interim title, I believe it was, at 115 pounds. Well, they fought a rematch, and the fight ended in two, but it ended in highly controversial nature. Um, Franco's damage to his eye. The referee ruled it was a result of a headbutt. They went to the replay. The replay in the replays, I guess, called it and ruled it by the. And the official ruling was it was by a headbutt, because the fight only went 2 rounds, it was a no contest. But ESPN looked at it. I looked at it myself because I have the fight on DVR. I was looking at it. No one saw a replay. So the question is, Daniel, if there was no, if there was no evidence of the damage being as a result of a headbutt, no one sees it. The ruling, it doesn't make any sense. What say you when you try to go through all the channels to get things right, and yet you still get it wrong? Only in boxing, Daniel. Only in boxing.
Oh, Jesus, where to begin on this? Oh, wow. Okay. First of all, when it comes to this situation, we all have to realize, unfortunately, that the replay system that they launched is still a fairly new concept in what they're working with. There's a lot of kinks now. This fight was a great example of there's a lot of kinks that they still need to work on when it comes to how replays are handled. Because when you look at the first round, yes, there was clash of heads. Yes, there was headbutt, but it wasn't at the eye that was impacted, the right eye. It was a headbutt that impacted more the left eye. So you have that going along. And every other replay that ESPN was showing, it was showing the eye closing in relation to a punch. Second, the main thing is that there was obviously some miscommunication between Russell Moore, the referee, and the corners because you could have, if it was something very, very open ended, Moloney probably would have known, except because when they stopped the fight, you saw how he cheered. He thought he got a knockout. That shows that there was miscommunication. He didn't hear that Russell Moore said there was clash of heads. And when that happens, when there's no way for a corner to like example try to throw like the coaches throw a challenge flag in football. There's no way right now that I know of, at least in this current schematic, for corners to say, I want to replay. I want a replay of this because I disagree with this. And third, we have to realize this delay in deciding what is what took a half an hour. And in that meantime, you hear ESPN, you hear the commission talking to ESPN saying, hey, we need a footage of this, of the first round. And then we need a specific footage from this part of the first round. Like, they're talking. But we also have to realize this is, at the end of the day, the official that's right now that Nevada signs to Gardner replay is another referee. In this case, Robert Byrd. And say what you want about Robert Byrd. To me, this to me was a situation where referees decided to circle the wagons, and the athletic commission decided to go along with it. It's a very, very unfortunately disheartening thing because you saw the emotion of Moloney in the post-fight interview. Like, they bleeped him for a good amount, like what, 30 seconds when he started to answer the first question. And you legitimately feel bad when it comes to Franco. Like, okay, you didn't get knocked out, you didn't lose. Okay, your eye got shut. It happens. Like, if anything, like I said, the doctors did the right thing in stopping it when they did to make sure that your eye got done. But then you have to talk about the fact that first it came out during that fight that he apparently signed a contract with MTK Promotions, and that promotion's Twitter account decided to post a victory tweet as this was happening, assuming that he was going to win and not knowing that this was happening. So it's just a bad mess all around. If it, in all honesty, there should be a third fight just to make sure this clears up, because the first fight, Franco did prove there was into it. The second fight, okay, your eye got swollen. You weren't really getting beat up, but your eye got swollen, so you had to make sure you were risking it. and the third fight could solve it. The problem is now when it comes to the promotion issues, when it comes to Franco, because we don't know if MTK signed it outright. We don't know if there's a co-promotional deal with them and Golden Boy. And if it is, it's well within their right for them not to go along with it. This is just a mess all around. Like, it's true. Like, only in boxing can you have the bare evidence right in front of you and still the wrong decision happens.
A complete cluster. You know what, Gail? Robert Byrd usually has had a decent reputation prior to this, but this was some Lawrence Cole shit as we saw here.
Lawrence Cole, the name that we have not heard on this podcast.
I don't understand. I don't know what's worse, his decision or the fact that the Nevada State Athletic Commission decided to go along with it. Either way, Mr. Moloney, he got screwed, and I don't blame him one bit for cussing up a storm in the post fight. And to Daniel's point, on GP alone, a third fight needs to happen between these two. This is an outrage.
I do think a third fight will happen, and it should be a cracker. We're all going to be very, very interested to see what happens. It was such an unfortunate situation, and it was one of those things where once the first mistake was made, the cover-up is worse than the crime, and everybody's figuring out how to back out of it, and instead the hole just got dug deeper as everyone tried to figure it out, and the time delay, it wasn't quite as bad as sitting around sleeping in your dressing room waiting for an MMA fight to finish. It wasn't quite that bad, but it still seemed incredibly long. And hopefully the commission, out of the glare of the clock ticking, knowing they were holding up a rare network free boxing broadcast, I think under that pressure, it made decision making worse, unfortunately. Hopefully at an upcoming commission meeting, and these are public governmental meetings that take place every month, you can find out what the agenda is and get the minutes and the whole thing. They'll have a discussion about how not to screw this up again in the future. I feel terrible for Moloney, who was just so upset. A lot of people made him the underdog in this fight to get his belt back, and here he thought he had managed to do it, and it got snatched away from him. But it's a crummy thing for Franco too, because everyone's now looking at him saying, well, you don't really deserve that belt. You didn't defend it. So they're both screwed over. They're both going to be very motivated to perform in a rematch, and that's a fight I truly, truly look forward to in 2021.
And indeed, let's hope it happens in 2021. I hope, fingers crossed, that all parties do the right thing, and the third fight gets made. Hopefully back on ESPN at that same venue. Or well, in Vegas, put it that way. Put it in Vegas. Just hopefully this time, maybe a different referee, and maybe the Nevada State Athletic Commission do the right thing this time and don't screw things up like they did 2 weeks ago. Let's move on to some other fights, some more current fights that took place this weekend. I want to focus on the ladies here. Eddie Hearn did kind of a very unique thing. I'm going back to you, Gail. A women's card, 3 women's world championship bouts. I'm going to focus on 2 of them instead of all 3 because we're a little bit short on time here. Katie Taylor, undisputed women's lightweight champion, arguably the top women's fighter in the world, pound for pound. She defended her title against Miriam Gutierrez. Terri Harper, who holds a belt at 130 pounds, WBC version, made a mandatory defense against Katharina Thanderz. Taylor dominated, as did Harper. Taylor won by decision. Harper won by stoppage late. I want to say round 9, either round 9 or 10. I could be off on that. But anyway, Taylor hit Gutierrez with every punch in the book. How she stayed up. She knocked her down early in the fight, but how she stayed up for the until the end, I will never understand. She got a heart of a lion. And Harper, coming off of her previous bout in which she uh, um, struggled against, oh gosh, Natasha Jonas. Yes, Natasha Jonas. A lot of people felt she lost. Came back with a dominant performance against Thanderz. So, your opinion on this fight, and in the aftermath, where does this lead to? Where do you see both ladies moving forward?
So these were both essentially showcase fights. There was terrific symbolism, though, in having this card with Taylor in the main event, Terri Harper, who Eddie Hearn is extremely fond of, in the co-main, and Rachel Ball, the third fighter, who Eddie is also extremely high on and very appealing fighter. To have all three on the card, all three perform absolutely as expected and then some. Really a good exercise, a good outing. Did it move the needle a lot for any of them individually? That's probably questionable. I mean, Taylor had an ideal opponent in front of her who was willing to stand there and trade and let her have it. But Taylor could really, really show off her technique and her skills. She's not a powerhouse puncher. There's only a few women really who are. Let's be candid about that. But it just shows you how refined her skills have gotten, how much attention she gives to craft, to every skill set. So it's good for her to be seen by the fans, good for her to lend her name to Harper and to Ball on the undercard. And there were a lot of things she could do. To me, the big fight waiting for her isn't really Claressa Shields. I know that's the fight everybody talks about. They are so different in size. We wouldn't even be talking about that fight in the future if it wasn't for the fact that the talent pool at the highest level for women is just very thin. Especially if once you get out of the tiniest weight classes, where a lot of the women fight under featherweight, once you get much above that, it starts to get rough. What I am really waiting for is to see her take on the winner of the rematch between Cecilia Brækhus and Jessica McCaskill. That's the fight to seal legacy for whoever wins. That's the fight I want to see. In the meantime, Taylor's going to have to stay busy where she can, take fights where she can, with lesser opponents, I'm sure, unfortunately. Although, we might see Delphine Pursoon and her go at it again. I'm not sure Pursoon's up for it, but she's just got some limited opportunities. I would say anybody who thinks they could take Katie on, good luck with that. There's only a few women I think that can really compete with her at this point. She's just that good.
And what say you about Harper? And the reason I mentioned her specifically, Gail, and you can get into the conversation as well, Daniel. When you look at the 130-pound division, women's boxing, dare I say that Hearn is trying to build himself up a little tournament here. He has Harper in the fold. News broke during our hiatus that he also signed the Korean champion WBA version,
Yes.
Hyung Mi
Yes.
Choi.
Right.
He also has the French woman, Hamadouche, the IBF champion. You got Michaela Mayer out there, who Harper said, Harper, who broke her hand in her win. She said that in response to Michaela Mayer, who's always running her mouth, Harper said, "Don't worry, I'm coming for you." Could you see like a tournament at 130 pounds for the women here, spearheaded by Eddie Hearn?
Absolutely, and smart for him to do it. He's starting to come around like a lot of the promoters do when they get a chance to work with women at the highest levels. Great credit to the fans in Great Britain. UK boxing fans are just into it. Just terrific fans. They support their product at home. They travel, and they're starting to do the same for the women. And so Hearn is very smart to jump on this because he does have a critical mass of talent that he can get under the Matchroom banner, whether they're UK fighters or not, because he's going to need some opponents anyway. You know, again, you're going to have to kind of fool around with some of the women moving up and down in weight divisions. You know, perhaps there's, a few just under or rising stars. And let's not forget, hopefully next year, we will have Olympic talent emerging from a Tokyo Olympic Games. So there's a lot of potential in putting together what ends up being a de facto tournament, especially because they do need to buy time for that eventual Taylor versus either Brekus or McCaskill fight, which I really do think is one of the best fights you can make in the women's side of the game right now. And we still have got, Amanda Serrano floating around out there, and we know everybody feels about that. That seemed to have some bridges burnt, but time heals things, and when there's the potential for money and legacy involved, I think that's still doable.
Yeah, but Serrano, in terms of her team, they got to straighten up and fly right and decide what they want to do. I'll bring you into the discussion, Daniel. I'm interested your reaction to the fights between Taylor's win and Harper's win, and your reaction to kind of the discussion Gail and I had about both of their futures, particularly Harper, who I mentioned looks like a tournament may be going on. And the reason I mentioned that tournament because Gail, within your breakdown, you talked about how there's very few punchers. Well, when you look at 130 pounds, you got Havanus. She's one of them, the ladies who can really punch 21 and one. Her early losses to the aforementioned Delphine Peterson, but within her 21 wins, 17 KOs, and the Korean lady Choi. The reason she is so important, as much as Clarissa Shields talk about how much she's a history-making figure and quote and all this stuff, and I'm not going to take away any of her accomplishments and how she's won so many titles at so many weights in a relative quick period of time. The reason Choi is important because she's done something no man or woman has done. She won a world title in her professional debut, right? Won the WBA junior lightweight title in 2008 in her professional debut at 18 years old, Daniel. She's been a champion for 12 years. And the fact that Hearn now has her in the fold, as well as Harper and Hamadouche, again, it looks like he's trying to brew something up at 130 pounds when it comes to the ladies.
And now notice another pattern because guess who's now a new champion who may be left out of that little tournament hold? Little Miss Michaela Mayer. Although I think Bob and Eddie could probably do business a little bit better for themselves. But when it comes to the fights themselves, for example, when it came to the Taylor fight, I'm really surprised her opponent stood up to that type of punishment the way she did. I'm really, really surprised, especially after the first 3 rounds. But at the end of the day, this was a good confidence builder. It built really good rounds when it comes to the confidence of it, particularly after, like I said, the fights that you went with Pursoon. And you're and you're starting to build your claim, starting to make your claim because sure, there's not a lot of women that will be willing to step into the ring and have the capacity to actually legitimately be toe to toe with Katie Taylor. The only person I can think of at the top of my head is right now Amanda Serrano. But they need to really, really, really fix that before it gets any better, because we know there's some real personal animus in that area. So hopefully they'll be able to build that into it, because if you try to get the fight with the brackets at this point, McCaskill at this point, I probably wouldn't say against it, particularly when it comes to the fact that Katie Taylor is not known. It's known for speed, but it's not known for a lot of power. And then that gets interesting as far as Harper goes. That's going to be a fun little tournament that's going to happen. And he kind of needs after the last fight. You can argue she lost, and this fight was more of a gimme. It was something that she needed to do. It's always like a good build-up fight, but at the end of the day, they're positioning themselves pretty well. But I would not mind seeing Miss, before that happens, I wouldn't mind seeing Miss Harper and Miss Mayer getting it on first before the little tournament starts.
For me, I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch between Harper and Jonas. That's unsettled in my opinion. As I mentioned before, a lot of people felt that Jonas, as I've mentioned previously discussing that fight, a lot of people felt that Jonas beat her that night. I put myself in that pack, and I want to see the fight again, see a rematch to see for kind of a more definitive conclusion. It was too close. It could have went back either way. And given how Jonas performed in that fight, she fought well. I think that she deserves another shot. So for me, so Harper Jonas 2 first. That needs to be settled. And then moving forward, a fight between the winner of that to fight Michaela Mayer and the other two champions, Choi and Hamadouche, at 130 pounds. Have Eddie Hearn feature them either on separate on the card of a high profile design card, or do the same thing that he just did with this recent women's card. Have Hamadouche and Choi defending their titles in separate bouts. Maybe have them ultimately lead up to a unification bout along the line. Bottom line is, when it comes to the junior lightweight division, women, things are all good, and it looks like things are really starting to pop off. And in terms of Katie Taylor, just keep the ball rolling. She's on fire right now. Very impressive in her last fight. She could look down at the fighters at 130 pounds because she's cleaned out her current division, or she could look up the winner of the winner of. She could look up maybe a potential bout against Chantel Cameron at 140 pounds, or the winner of, or Cecilia Braga should she win a rematch there. So she got options all over. Just keep her in the ring, just keep her active or whatever, because she's making a strong case right now for top lady in the sport overall. One more fight before we move on to any kind of news or whatnot. Conor Benn, he fought against a guy by the name of Sebastian Formella. I wasn't able to see the bout, but from my reading, he dominated throughout. Called out Josh Kelly, UK welterweight, after the fight. Gail, Daniel, if you were able to see the fight, any comments, any observations, and your thoughts on Ben and where he goes from here, and particularly calling out Josh Kelly at a kind of a UK showdown at 140, 147 pounds.
Yeah, this is a fighter that a lot of Americans don't watch too much. He's still young. He's only 24 years old. He has the legacy of being the son of Nigel Benn, which is why he's of such great interest over in the UK. And this was a dominating, if not a spectacular performance. It was a overwhelming, unanimous decision. He really did grind him down. He didn't blow him out spectacularly. And there are a lot of questions, despite the fact he's got a 17-0 record, 11 KOs, still just 24, just turned 24. But, is really, really tough when you're the son of a famous name, and we know who a lot of them are. You know, they are damned with great expectations. So a lot of people are already talking about, well, has Conor Benn kind of reached the apex of what he can do? But his minders have been very careful about bringing him along. Arguably Sebastian Formella was probably his best opponent to date, and that's how it should be when you start getting to this level. I imagine there weren't a whole lot of U.S. watchers stopping their day this weekend to take it in.
Any quick word on this, Daniel? Should we move on?
No, it's a fair assessment, and there's a reason I think in many ways that Conor Benn would not been shot up as quickly as you want to do into, because you have to take into account the involvement of the parents. I don't think Nigel Benn is in full, like, stepping on the gas himself a little bit too much when it comes to his son. And it's hard to show. Build steady, build slow. Make your reputation be, I'm Conor Benn, not I'm Nigel Benn's son. You can't put yourself in a situation like with Chris Eubanks Jr., where the majority of the reputation is, I'm the son of Chris Eubanks. And you haven't really proven anything much otherwise, especially at the top stage. So it's a good fight. He did fairly well. You got to give him a couple of years before it really, really gets going.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Josh Kelly calling him out. That seems reasonable. It will be a pretty significant bout over in England. Uh, right pairing at the right time for the two. It will be kind of a crossroads fight for each guy. Uh, Next step up for the winner, absolutely. And I have no problems with that fight. And a lot of people will look at this fight also not just because he's the son of Nigel Benn, but also comparing his performance. Comparing his performance against Formella to that of Sean Porter, who also defeated Formella in his last bout and beat him in pretty dominant fashion. So some people may want to play a game of how did kind of Benn look against Formella versus Porter, and kind of analyze him based on that. But yeah, nice win, solid win, won conclusively. And he moves on, and hopefully he'll get the fight with Kelly in 2021. Let's move on to some news here. One quick story here I want to talk about. People may be asking, with all the talk about all the discussion about boxing in 2021, one guy whose name you haven't heard much from is Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, who still is IBF middleweight champion of the world. People may be asking, where is Triple G? When will he fight again? Well, he's going to fight again in December. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Going to fight a guy by the name of Camille Sermenta. The fight's going to happen on December 18th at a locale to be announced. I'm hearing it's going to be in the state of Florida. But the kicker is in terms of the fight, Gail. It's not just the fight itself, but the fact that Triple G has kind of restructured his deal with DAZN. He signed with DAZN in 2019. It was for a reported six fight deals guaranteed worth estimated 100+ million. Part of his restructured deal is he restructured the deal was going to be still for 6 fights, but going to be roughly around $15 million a fight. The key is that when he originally signed with DAZN last year, part of it came with gaining equity in the company. He's going to maintain that equity, so he'll get the guaranteed 15 mil, but he could get additional money because of the equity included in that. Thoughts on the fact that he's going to be fighting in December, and your reaction to this restructured deal? Is this the byproduct of the fact that the changing scope of boxing in the era of 2019 and no live gate, and subsequently a lot of fighters have to take less money?
Yeah, absolutely. And the clock is ticking for Golovkin in a way it isn't for his younger counterparts. He doesn't have that many fights left. He is fast closing in on 40. He's quickly, losing his own drive to get into the ring. He not so privately admits that from time to time. He would like to see himself toward the end of his career. And so he needs to be practical about it. I think in many ways, given that his career had, a fairly difficult start, a lot of promise. He stalls. He finally gets to the United States. He takes off like a rocket, and then once again, here he is stalled a bit with his fate in some other people's hands. That's got to be frustrating. He was still contracted, even in the restructuring, for what virtually every other fighter in the sport, save a very few, would consider really good money. He's not going to suffer. He isn't one of these guys that collects a lot of cars or homes or, horses or any of that nonsense. He seems to live pretty simply. I think he's driven the same black BMW, for quite a few years now. He's one of those guys. This is fine with him. This is mandatory that has just been sitting there off on the side forever. It's finally going to happen. His fans will love it. Florida is the projected venue. Wouldn't surprise me if he maybe even ended up in Texas. That seems to be everybody else's default. Gets this out of the way. And it's a really important temperature check fight after that really, really close victory, in air quotes, over Sergey Derevyanchenko. Everybody needs to see what Golovkin looks like. Now, if he can blow out Zeremeta a la Steve Rolls, everybody will get re-excited again about that trilogy fight that we're still all talking about. And, Canelo still is, perfectly free to engage with DAZN or not, and Golovkin or not. This is not a slammed door by any stretch of the imagination. And, we'll see what happens. Golovkin is also one of those guys that, kind of stays in shape year round. He's never really all that far away from a fight. However, this is a pretty quick pretty quick training camp, unless he's sort of been secretly going at it in earnest. And at this age, that's an interesting factor. Whether in retrospect on the 19th, we're going to be saying, well, you didn't have a long enough training camp. So I'll be very interested to see what happens and what other kind of card they can put together. There's a lot of interesting young talent in Florida. They might just throw in that undercard. So well worth it.
What say you, Daniel, about the not just the fight itself, but the restructured deal with DAZN?
It's the main thing that makes sense. Like, this is one of the things that bothered me when it came to Canelo lawsuit. Is that you got to take into account the situation. There's a lot of money going around because right now, outside of Texas, which unfortunately I have a feeling that might blow us spectacularly in their face. You're not going to be able to generate a lot of gate. Now, as far as Florida, when it comes to this fight with Triple G, it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do because it's most likely going to have to be in the stadium because the NBA is going to start their season pretty soon around that time in December. And from the looks of it, they're actually going to play some preseason games. So American Airlines Arena and the Amway Center may not be useful for this fight when it comes into that area. So you may have to look at stadiums like Tropicana Field. Unfortunately, you can't do Hard Rock Stadium because the NFL season's still happening. So that takes out Raymond James Stadium, and that also takes out the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium too. So that the venue is going to be interesting to do. But this is a fight that you really need to measure because there's a strong case to be made that Derevchenko beat Golovkin, and much like what we talked about when it comes to Harper, this is a fight that you need to build your confidence on. Because if you don't look really, really good in this fight, whatever prospects that you wanted to get when that third fight with Canelo, they fly out the window. Because with Canelo being a free agent the way he doesn't owe anybody anything as far as an obligation, as far as to doing it. And that cranks up a lot of people's wallets.
You mentioned that you Gail mentioned she wouldn't be surprised if it was in Texas. You kind of followed up by saying that you think if fights in Texas or whatever kind of blow up in their face, quote unquote from you. Expound on that. What do you mean?
Well, like I mentioned, we're still riding this COVID thing. There's still all the news are talking about when it comes to vaccines happening. We're not seeing something happen pretty much not until more than likely the first 100 days of the Biden administration. I mean, if you have this fight in December, as cases are still rising up, as hospitals are filling up again, and if you go to Texas, we don't know how bad the numbers are going to be in the San Antonio area after what happened in the Alamo Dome. We don't know if you want to go through that spell again so soon. It's one of the reasons why I honestly do not think the Canelo Smith fight will happen this year. I think it will happen in the spring because you need to make sure that it's a safe environment out there. And Texas ain't exactly the state, one of the states that you be considered safe. Florida could be even worse. So that's what I mean. Like it could really blow up in their face. You're trying to get him into it, but then if you go into an area where the pandemic's starting to rise up pretty well, and if a vaccine doesn't really become widely available until the spring, yeah, that's a potential to blow up in a lot of people's face.
Okay. Gotcha. Just COVID-19 concerns as the numbers keep rising in
Yeah.
a state where let's just be clear about this. The numbers have been rising in Texas, and what uh, Jerry Jones, particularly his stadium and whatnot, saying he's going to have open venues in other places and other venues in Texas, saying they're going to allow more and more fans. It could just, yeah, I could see why you mentioned it could be impending danger, as you use your word, a disaster. Let's move on here and talk about some fights here because again we're a little bit short on time. I'm going to split these fights up. Um, Going to you, Gail, to talk about these first two fights on the 27th in Hollywood, Florida, on the Zone. Uh, Card headlined by Daniel Jacobs. He's going to be fighting Gabriel Rosado on the undercard of that. Demetrius Andrade. He's going to be fighting a guy by the name of Dusty Hernandez-Harrison. 10-round, 9 title bout. Uh, Jacobs and Rosado is a 12-round bout at 168 pounds. Okay, I'm looking at this, Gail. If Jacobs and Andrade don't win, do not just win, but win with ease. They either one of them are not the fighters that I thought they were. Uh, this is a showcase bout. Looks to be a showcase bout on paper, and it should turn out to be as such on the night. Um, yeah, this would be easy. Look, I know Gabriel Rosado was tough, but Rosado was really a 154 pounder. If we were going to really be honest about it, while Jacob has kind of outgrown middleweight, is more of a super middleweight, and Andrade, he should have easy work as well. If they don't, I'm side eyeing both of them when we do the next episode.
Well, unfortunately, Andrade is without a dance partner due to a COVID.
Oh gosh, I
Yeah.
oh
Harrison is out, forced off the card due to a positive COVID test last Friday. So, even in this era, that's pretty tough to scurry up an opponent. They did not make an effort to do so. So Andrade's going to sit out so he doesn't have to worry about you getting all up in his grill. That's one thing. But we are going to see Jacob and Rosado. As far as we know, everything's still a go there. And I don't hate this fight. I don't hate it. Both of these guys, say what you will about them, reaching the limits of their skills, being stalled at their respective levels. These are guys that both give a good, honest effort, generally entertain both of them. This is not going to be a technical fight. It could be a damned ugly fight, which might mean it's a beautiful, ugly fight for us fans if it gets rough and crazy. And, Jacob might be up for that. He occasionally will bang when he feels like it. And he and Rosado just might poke each other enough and, jaw at each other enough up till the fight to do that. And, you could do worse for entertainment. I think it might be fun to watch. I'm not sure what it's going to prove for either one, especially at 168, where there's younger, fresher talent afoot. If it gives the winner one little last boost toward the end of his career with a few more fights, that's okay. Particularly with Jacob, we forget what an amazing story he's got. He shouldn't even be here at this point of his life. And the fact that we're talking about him this way as if it's just no big thing, despite everything he's gone through, being a cancer survivor, having a lot of other troublesome issues in his life, he can walk away feeling extremely successful. The one and only issue is that I hope neither of them get seriously injured, which is possible. Neither of them is the punching powerhouse they perhaps once were at an earlier stage of their career. But, I think they'll deliver. I don't hate it.
Well, the problem is that Rosado is willing. He likes to fight, but he gets hit and he gets hit a lot and he cuts. He has the style that Jacob should look good against, and because of his deficiencies in terms of defense, Rosado, I just think he has the potential of not just getting beat, but getting beat up. And given also he's not the fighter that he used to be, and he's naturally smaller. I just don't see things looking good for him. So he should win easily. I'm going to you, Daniel, to talk about this next fight. Triggering contest over in London. UK heavyweights, Joyce and Daniel Dubois. We've talked about Dubois. We've talked about both men on this show quite a bit, particularly Dubois, up and coming on the come up. We all heard the rumors about how he has hurt guys in sparring, including one Anthony Joshua. I can't call this one. Well, I can't call it. I lean towards Dubois here, but Joyce is he's tough, he's durable, and he comes to fight. What say you about the young upstart Dubois against a Joyce who is older, but two names here, intriguing contest over when it comes to UK heavyweights.
The fight that I really thought that Franco was going to try to snake his way out of not happening is actually happening. Wow. First, let's face it. Like both of them, like I said, are aligned with Frank Warren, which means they're also going to be aligned with Bob Arum, who's currently aligned with Tyson Fury. So this is many ways an audition to be an opponent for Tyson Fury, and to me, like this is going to be a very, very even fight because Dubois young, Dubois tough, and we've all heard the stories about his power, but Joyce is no slouch. He does fight really well. He is really skilled in the ring for a heavyweight. And even for a fighter who's older, he does not have a lot of wear and tear when it comes to what he has to go through when it comes to fights. Part of it's because he spent a lot of time in the amateurs, but that does mean that he hasn't had to have as many craps or take as many blows in the professional ranks. So to me, that's going to be a very interesting fight. Joyce never hasn't looked old enough to me where you can say that Father Time would catch up to him. I'm actually probably going to give Joyce a bit of a chance here, even though my mind is my mind is saying Dubois because that kid packs a punch. A little bit of my heart is saying Joyce because I have a feeling he may find a way to pull it off. And like I said, this will be an audition to fight Tyson Fury, title or no title, in 2021.
Going with Dubois on this one. Joyce, he's solid, he's durable, but he walks right into punches. Doesn't move his legs a lot. And if Dubois can handle the pressure and he's in shape, he has power, a lot of it. I think he's going to catch Joyce. And it'll be the equivalent of slow death. He'll beat him over time, and eventually he'll get stopped. I'll say between 6 and 8 rounds. Um, let's
Dubois
move.
all day. Dubois all day.
Right.
Joyce is not as young a man as his record might lead you to believe. Dubois is fresh. Dubois is on the upswing. He's got this. He's got
And
this.
yeah. And last and certainly not least, this final fight.
We
This
got to talk
upcoming,
about it. We've
this
got to
upcoming,
talk about it.
right. This upcoming quote unquote exhibition between two fighters who are, I mean, let's face it, they're legends in the sport. Got to give them the credit for that. But um, this is entertainment thing value as much as it is a fight. It just depends on, seriousness and whatnot and who kind of, how can I put this? And how can I put this? Who will understand that this is a quote unquote exhibition and who will not? Then I mean, the fight in the exhibition I'm talking about is one uh, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones fighting this week in Carson, California. Was it formerly as the place I still like to call StubHub, right, Gail?
We all still call it StubHub. Its official name is the Dignity Health Sports Park.
Yeah, 8 round exhibition for
AKA
some kind
StubHub.
of for some kind of belt that the WBC just made up. Um, Anybody who wants to jump in, Daniel, Gail wants to jump in, please do. Even though it's a quote unquote exhibition, I think this is going to turn out into a fight. Even though and they're trying to do everything to not make it a fight, including make the rounds only 2 rounds apiece. That's nonsense. Um, they quelled this by making this 2 rounds, but they won't let ladies fight for 3 rounds. That's just dumb to me. Um, I think that Tyson, who's apparently training like a madman and looks to be, and from what I'm hearing, is in great shape. Um, I think he's in full fight mode. I think the things that he's been saying in the lead up, that's not just talk. When Tyson gets into his zone, we all know how he acts. I think he's in his zone now. And once that bell rings, that thing is going to click in his head and he's going to get into seek and destroy mode, especially if Roy hits him a couple times. And and the problem is Roy is so far removed from the fighter that he was. Um, he doesn't. He ain't got the legs. He ain't got the legs. My goodness, the early training footage we saw of him was training in flip flops. How are you going to prepare training in flip flops? And fighting a Tyson who's dead ass serious in terms of his training, I think he's not. I think that Jones is not going to be able to get away from Tyson. And we all know when it comes to Roy Jones over the last half of his career, the last few handful of fights, a little more than a handful of fights now, he gets clocked hard. He falls. I mean, we saw the Lebedev bout where he got hit and he looked like he died in the ring. We seen it before. He hit him high on the temple area above the ear. His body stiffens up, so he doesn't have the legs. He doesn't have the chin against anybody who can punch. Exhibition be damn. I think Tyson's going to hit him, eventually knock him out. Your thoughts?
Well, here's the ground rules for this fight under the California State Athletic Commission. Yeah, it's a sanctioned fight. However, as you point out, it's going to be 2-minute rounds, 8 2-minute rounds. No knockouts are allowed according to the rules. Okay. Right.
Tyson's going for the KO.
Right.
We all know it.
Because sure, after one occurs, you can be DQ'd, but you're still going to have bragging rights, and everybody's going to know, right?
It all it takes is one shot.
Yeah. If there is a cut, the fight will be stopped. If a cut occurs, the fight is over, according to the rules. I'm just reading the rules. There is no betting allowed because it is an exhibition. You can't put a bet down officially. Okay. Again, I'm just reading the rules. There are no judges that are going to be ringside at StubHub. However, the WBC has appointed 3 judges who will be judging remotely. Former women's great Christy Martin, Vinny Pazienza, and Chad Dawson, which are a odd trio if you ever could have made them up.
Well, when did Chad Dawson become a great?
Well, what can I say?
And when did Vinny Pazienza become a great? We'll be honest.
Yeah. And then commentating, one among the commentators on the fight, they're not stupid because they want to draw a little, cross promotion, is going to be middleweight MMA fighter Israel Adesanya. So, it's just one of these. Let's just throw every single thing into the Instapot and see what cooks up when it's all done. Right. Who knows what versions of Roy and Mike are going to show up. They look great. We've all seen video. They look great training. They're physically in wonderful condition. And don't say for a such and such age. They're in wonderful condition. They're in excellent condition from a physical standpoint. Full stop, period. They look great. These are guys who know how to train, literally been doing it all their lives, decided it was worth putting in the work. They've got to have been loving the attention. The fight is almost an afterthought, truly. There is an undercard. It's loaded up with a couple of other gimmick fights. The co-main is our old buddy Logan Paul, who's fighting the NBA's Nate Robinson, which that's just still friggin' head scratch. Why? Well, because it will make money in this environment. People are curious. If you weren't curious enough about Tyson and Jones, and you're in a younger demographic, there are people who are following Paul.
To be fair, former super middleweight champion Badu Jack is going to be fighting on that card.
Well, and that was my third comment. Now, here's the outrage to me. Badu Jack's coming back. This is kind of a warm-up fight for him, after suffering that just crazy cut on his head in the fight with Marcus Brown. You would think Badu Jack would be given at least the co-main spot. No, he's the third fight on the card in a 10-rounder. That's an insult. And at the first...
Are you telling me that they're going to dare put Logan Paul and Nate Robinson above?
They're the co-main. I
cannot.
Yes, they are. So at the presser for this fight, with all of the guys participating, there is nobody inside boxing who doesn't like and admire Badu Jack. He is just a good human being. Speaking of honest effort, he always gives one. there's a lot to admire about him. He's easy to deal with. But even the easygoing, decent Badu Jack at the presser had to say, well, yeah, I'm the third fight down on the card, whatever. He must have decided that the insult was worth swallowing because he does need a fight. He does need a stay busy fight. He probably needs a payday to keep all his folks on the payroll. And he decided to go ahead and do it. But he's the guy I really feel bad for. We do not know what we're going to see. Everybody's all excited about some great, crazy, going to kill each other fight. Truthfully, I just do not think that's going to happen. I don't. But by the time it doesn't happen, everybody's money will have already been spent. And we're going to have another group of people saying, damn it, I spent money for that. And they're the same people who said, damn it, why did I spend money for Mayweather and McGregor? And damn it, why did I spend money for Mayweather and Pacquiao? Well, there's plenty of them out there. So this is what you get, everybody. And don't say you weren't warned.
Daniel, thoughts?
Have any of you seen that movie Grudge Match?
No.
Came out like a few years ago. Robert De Niro, Sylvester Stallone. Basically, the movie is these two guys are over the hill boxers. They retired. Robert De Niro owns car dealerships, and he's known as a playboy. Then the other guy is stayed home. They're in Pittsburgh, and they had a fight a long, long time ago. And it wasn't decided, retired. So then somebody just decided to dig it up and make a gimmick fight between two senior citizens and make it an actual fight. This is the living embodiment of the movie Grudge Match. Unfortunately, because we have a Mike Tyson who's in his 50s. I think Roy Jones is pretty much the same age.
I think 51 and 54.
And the co-main event is a YouTube guy. Yeah. And YouTube guy Logan Paul, who I don't know if it's either him or his brother, the ones that decided to film in Japan, the forest that was known, I think it's called the suicide forest, a forest unfortunately where people in Japan go to commit suicide, and decided to film that. I don't know which one of the two brothers did that. And please tell me Nate Robinson is not trying to come back to the NBA. Please don't tell me that he's just trying to find a way to get a contract with the New York Knicks because the New York Knicks are just that stupid. But
well, James Dolan is in charge. I'm just saying.
But neither he. I know. But okay, at least they're not treating this like in the sense of an official fight. Okay, you're gonna have celebrity judges. Okay, Chrissy Martin, that's pretty nice. Shout out to the women. Vinny Pazienza, real good story. You remember they made a movie about him a few years ago too, about him recovering from that accident that left him in that halo for years. And they come back in a fight against Roberto Duran. We have to remember that. And to come back from the surgery. So it's an inspirational story. I forgot who the third guy was that you mentioned. But they're at least not treating this as like an official fight. The only worry I have is Tyson going crazy. Where if Jones hits him with like a shot that's a little bit too hard, Tyson will go full Tyson. He'll forget that he's not supposed to knock anybody out. And then he knocks Roy Jones out through the ropes like Joe Smith Jr. did a B-hop. That's my fear. And unfortunately, that's probably going to wind up happening. Because who allowed this train wreck. Why not let these two guys just debate and just talk about their careers? But no, we need to do this. And we have to remember Mike is actually somewhat serious about doing another comeback, an actual comeback, meaning he wants to fight Usyk, Joshua, Wilder, Fury. If he actually looks somewhat good in this, he's going to think he's going to be able to do that. And then we're going to have to deal with a 50-plus-year-old Mike Tyson trying to pull off a George Foreman. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, there it is. It's out there, and because it's out there and it's going to happen, might as well talk about it.
The buyer beware. This is your
right.
consumer message from your friends at the Pound for Pound Boxing Report.
Indeed, I think we're going to end the show on that note because we are a little bit pressed. But go ahead.
It is. Mike, I'll say this. I'm sorry, Mike. Beforehand, I don't normally encourage people to do illegal streaming when it comes into this. But if you're gonna watch this, do not spend your money. Go find an illegal streaming site. Don't reward these idiots.
Right, because
oh hell, give it 10 extra minutes and you're all going to see the highlights. Please, they'll show up online, they'll show up on Sports Center because nobody can resist. So you're going to see what's worth seeing without coughing up. If it was $9.99, sure, toss them a few bucks. We've all blown $10 on worse. But it's not. And I can't recall what the price tag is, but it's way too much. Give me a break.
Yeah, but it's the equivalent of people not helping themselves from watching a train wreck or a car crash. That's what this fight, I fear, is going to be. And yeah, I'm not saying Daniel is right in advocating people buying, suggesting that people watch this via illegal stream. I'm not saying he's right, but in the words of Chris Rock, but I understand. And I think we're going to end things on that note. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first, of course. One comment from Lance, LOL. They did it to, well, yeah, I guess you got a point there. They did it in terms of doing it to Haney. I guess you got a point there, but I think this is going to end up bad with this thing with Tyson and Jones. That's just me. I just going to end up bad, and unfortunately end up bad for one Roy Jones, because if he hits Tyson one good time, as Daniel said, that will light up that switch. And when Tyson is in fight mode, not all the screws are there. He's not all the way there. So I just hope that all parties when this is over, all parties are safe and sound, or walk home and get their money, and hope that's the last time I see either guy in the ring, because they really should not be fighting anymore. I'm just saying. Just know. And I'm going around the panel here. Thank you, Lance, for your comment. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, for those who want to hear you talk dancing with the stars. Because I believe it's on now, and you're sacrificing
that. It's the finals tonight. I know it's already taken place, but don't spoil it for those of us on the West Coast.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we even got Nelly in the final tonight.
See, I didn't even know. I admit. Or for those who want to check you out, you're semi-regular on TMZ.
I'm a monthly regular on TMZ. I lit up Scooter Braun over Taylor Swift last week. Hey,
you're semi-regular on TMZ, and next time you in, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, and a PS. The Tyson Jones Jr. fight is not in the WBC clean boxing program. There is no VADA testing for this fight. And I'm just saying, I don't think certainly Iron Mike could not pass a drug test at this point. I won't say anything about Roy. You can find me not watching this fight with my regular column on Communities Digital News, which is COMM, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. And give thanks to everybody in your life who's safe and healthy, and give thanks to all of the boxers, all the athletes, their teams, their trainers, everybody who's really put themselves through it since the pandemic for our entertainment, especially the guys that are giving up Thanksgiving dinner to make weight this weekend. That is a rough go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I second your words. I echo your words, your last words there. And next time you're on TMZ, do you guy a solid here and be having a small picture of that your regular pound for pound boxing report. I'm saying,
sneaking that past Harvey is a big ask, but we'll see what happens.
Now I go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, specifically when it comes to Miami Heat, because the season starts back up about a month from now. I'm almost a month to the day. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99, RAWKUZ99. Catch me there. Yeah, because the season's coming up. Whatever season we're going to wind up having. Because at least today was somewhat sane because Orange Mussolini kind of finally admitted defeat.
Yeah, he, almost an admission. I mean, he had no choice. There were people in his camp saying, basically, it's over. Stop fighting. Stop complaining. Stop fighting a fight you're not going to win. Let it go. Let it go. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk music or fitness with me, you know what it is. I'm on Twitter, Brother JR. I'm at Brother JR76. As I said earlier in the show, if you want to check out all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the blog page for the time being is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. Top right of the blog page, you'll find all the information where to find us all over social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, where you can check out the show in the podcast world, iTunes, Spotify. We're just about everywhere that carries a podcast. Where you can donate, you got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. And thanks for the I can't remember the name offhand for the $10 dono on PayPal recently during our 2 weeks. Also, thanks to that subscriber there on the PayPal. Again, PayPal donation links for those who want to donate. Really appreciate it. It'll help the overall production of the show behind the scenes. And last but certainly not least, if you're interested in getting in some shape or keeping your weight down during this holiday season, I am an online coach for Beachbody.com, Beachbody on Demand, doing a group fitness challenge right now based on one of the newer programs on Beachbody on Demand, 10 rounds, which is a boxing-based program that combines boxing cardio moves as well as weightlifting. Or if you just want 2 weeks of free workouts, Beachbody on Demand offers 2-week trials that goes throughout the year. So check out the 2-week trial there. It's free. So yeah, if you want to get into some serious workouts or you want to do some 2 weeks of work just to get things right during around this time so you can sweat out some of the holiday givings and holiday food, please check out my online coaching page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page, or hit me up privately on Brother JR76 or on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page at P4P Boxing Report. On the next episode, we will do a recap of that Tyson Jones quote unquote exhibition. We will do a recap of the Dubois fight against Joyce. Do a recap of Daniel Jacobs Rosado, Demetrius Yeah, Daniel Jacobs Rosado, because the Demetrius Andrade fight has been postponed, and we will do a preview of your favorite fighter, Daniel, Billy Joe Saunders, who you like to affectionately call what?
Good old Billy Ho.
Indeed, indeed, he's returning to the ring. He's going to defend his WBO super middleweight belt against Martin
What
Murray.
is he gonna do to fuck up his chances time?
That's going to be we're going to preview that fight that's going to happen on December the 4th in London on the Zone, and going to get into a deep dive breakdown of the fight that's going to happen the following day on the 5th, as Errol Spence makes his long-awaited return to the ring. He's going to fight Daniel Garcia. Going to talk about that fight, as well as maybe some fights on the undercard. Julio Cesar Ceja is fighting on that undercard. Jose Cito Lopez. We may talk about some fights on that entire card, but we're going to focus a lot of our attention on Spence and Garcia. So yeah, want to thank Lance for his comments in the chat. If you like what you've heard this evening on YouTube, please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. If you're checking us out on Spotify, iTunes, please subscribe to it as well, as subscribe there as well, and comment on iTunes. What you like about the show, what we can do to improve the show. 5-star review on iTunes will get read throughout the show. So, again, for Gail from Communities Digital News, from Daniel from the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been a special Thanksgiving edition of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 307. Everyone have a good evening, good night. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And if you don't, if and I'll just say this: be careful in terms of the traveling. We know the numbers in terms of writings in cases of COVID-19. Uh, all medical professionals and everybody is urging folks to not travel. Please don't, because the numbers are high enough. So the traveling that I'm still hearing people who are talking about traveling and gathering around, don't put yourself at risk. This pandemic is dangerous. The numbers are rising again. So for this Thanksgiving, at least, go a different route, just for safety concerns. Again, episode 307, Pound for Pound Box Report. Everyone have a good evening, good night, and have a happy Thanksgiving.